Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of The Influential Nonprofit. I'm Mary Andersch. I'm your host, as always. Today, I'm always making new best friends on my podcast. My new best friend is David Blyer with Arreva, and we are going to have a fantastic conversation today. I already know it about issue that is pressing on everyone because you talk to nonprofits all day, I talk to them all day, and that is acquisition retention and engagement. Hi, David. I'm excited to connect with you and share some wisdom for our nonprofit leaders and fundraisers.
Well, Marianne, thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast. I truly love doing this stuff. And I really, from my perspective, I really love sharing a lot of my insights and it's not just my personal opinions of insights. It's really what I have learned from others in the industry, the experience that they're really having, the challenges that they're really facing, literally each and every single day as they walk in, and some of them just really just need some guidance and a better understanding of how to get out of some of these challenging situations. Some of them are easier than others, and others are
Sure.
more difficult, but there's always a solution, Marianne.
There's always a way forward. All right, before we get into that, I always open with the same question, which is, tell me you're something you're proud of that you don't get to brag about a lot.
Wow, I will tell you something I'm proud of that I don't get to brag about publicly a lot. I'll say it that way. Is this team that I have at Arreva. I got to be honest with you. I've worked in this industry for 30 plus years. I've worked with some amazing people in the industry, but I truly feel blessed and that I have the ability to work with a collective team that truly cares so much about this industry. From my partner and co-founder Susan Packard Orr, who I've never seen anybody care more about an industry than her in my entire life, to my leadership team that cares as much as she does, but for other reasons, and they really believe in what they're doing and why they're doing this and really how they're helping the nonprofit industry as a whole. I've never seen a technology team that doesn't just go off and talk about technology, but when they hear about a client having an issue, they literally don't pass it over to support. They literally jump on a call, find out why, and try and fix this immediately. My sales team is amazing. I mean, they're not out pushing software to sell it. They're making sure that they sell to the right people, to the right audience, because we don't fit everybody. And from a sales perspective, a traditional way of selling is just I want to sell it and move on. They really care and they really feel like they're part of the nonprofits and stay in touch with them. Our marketing team is the same way. And this can always come from a leadership and a leader, that believes in this stuff, but it also comes, I really see it coming from the bottom up and from the top down and everything in between. And it's one thing to have a few great leaders in your company, but I can honestly say I'm so proud of the team that I have. And the nonprofit industry is not an easy industry. It's very demanding
It,
every
it is
single
not.
day. And,
Yes.
they want things that sometimes you just can't get and they don't really care. But I've never had the opportunity to work with a collective team like this and be so proud of them every single day. And I and it resonates. I mean, we have employees, when you say about proudness, we have people that have been with us for 30 years and 25 years and 20 years. I mean, and to go say those things like my CTO has been with me for 30 plus years. She's my housewife and Susan, who's my co-founder, has been in this industry for God only knows how many years. And they've really been part of it. We have people that have started here in an administrative role that are now leading 20 years later, as a chief operating officer. I mean, it's those things really make me proud. It's not just about having a great group of people, but it's having a great group of people that want to be with you and follow you because you have really strong values and good characters and
Yeah.
believe in what you're doing. And I'm really just proud of that. So I appreciate that. I really had a think about it because I have a lot of things that I'm proud of, but I'm really proud of
Right.
my team.
That's awesome. I always like that question. And I love what you're describing. And one of the things that you described is something I would want to tap into, which is you don't sell to somebody to sell to somebody, you sell to the right person. I think that is also about how to fundraise, right? It's like I am looking for a good match. It's a win-win for both of us. And my philosophy that I work with people on is like I can't make you care about something, right? I can't convince you. There's no magic word, there's no magic formula. It's gonna like open up some portal and you're gonna care about something. Why we care is about our own lived experience, our own values, and we see those values reflected in a nonprofit's work, right? So in the same sense of what like there are people that are a right fit and people that aren't, and that's okay. And so getting into this conversation around you know, um, acquisition, I think that's a great opening, which is like, who are we connecting with? And what I see as a lot of times people are trying to get people who don't care to care about something they were really never going to care about. And that's what makes it frustrating and hard. And I love your perspective, and I want you to comment on this, but I just want to clear for the audience, like, as Arreva, as the co-founder, you have such a broad-based view. You work with, what, thousands of nonprofits, right? You're talking to hundreds of people at a time. And I feel like you really have a super high level perspective as to like what are some of the issues, what are some of the trends, and then what can people do to like really connect better to prospective donors.
Well, I love that. First of all, I'll share with you. I think, from our perspective, we truly identified a problem in the industry. And I think there's a lot of great software out there. I'm really not here to knock anybody's software. And I think there's plenty of room for everybody that's out there. I think some of the software is better than others for sure. But I also looked at what the challenges a lot of these nonprofits were facing. And when you think about donor acquisition, or the decline in donor acquisition, or you think about the decline in donor retention, and by the way, the decline in donor retention doesn't necessarily mean that they lost a donor. But when you've been counting on, just an example, $1 every year from that same donor for the last 10 years, and you make assumptions that you're going to continue getting that, right? And then all of a sudden this year, they only give you 50 cents. Why? What happened,
Right.
right? And and when you look at a lot of the things out there, and I'm just giving you a very isolated perspective on that, right? But overall, there's a huge decline in donor acquisition. There's a huge decline in donor retention, and there's a lack of acknowledgement fast enough, right? So acknowledgement can be very positive, and acknowledgement can be very negative. And when you have despair, one of the things that I've seen out here is there's a lot of great software, like I was mentioning, but when you really look at the software that is out there, not all software is, and I call it point solutions, right? You've got some great team fundraising applications. You've got some great don't online donation platforms. You've got peer-to-peer fundraising platforms out there. You've got campaign management platforms. You've got text-based. You've got event registration and management software, and grant management. And I could go on with many other applications. But the point on that is, as these organizations, even when they're small and they're grassroots, I've seen it when they're just starting, they still have many applications, even if it's an Excel spreadsheet. And then they've got a donation platform, and then they're running an event, and you're using somebody else, and then they're using a So right then and there, they just started as a grassroots and already have three different applications or four different applications that they're using. But why is that an issue? It's an issue because none of these talk to one another, right? So it's what I call limited, and I'll explain what I mean by this. Limited integration, limited automation. It becomes very costly. And I don't just mean financially, but it becomes costly to manage, maintain these, move things around. The turnover rate, training new people on these is not easy for these nonprofits of all sizes, right? But what is the trickle effect of that? And that's really what you got to start digging into. When you have all these different applications, okay, and then what do you got to do to really create best? You've got to move data. So if you get a donation and you have a third-party donation platform, and then you got to capture that information later after somebody gave a donation or a reoccurring donation or a tribute gift, right? I mean, I could go into this a little bit further, but then you need to move that data and you need to put it on your donor relationship management database platform. That takes time, right? And then you want to set up a best practice to acknowledge those people. But the challenges that a lot of them have is they run an event, they're tired, they wait a week or 2 weeks, then they start doing some other things. We're very busy, everybody's busy, but by the time they put it into the data, the information into their donor relationship management database, and then by the time they reach out to these constituents, whether it's a phone call or even a thank you, what's that delay? The statistics say out there, if you don't respond within, I will say it this way, 48 to 72 hours, that will be a reaction of a very positive response, right? So Marianne, if I called you 3 days after you went to an event, you'd be like, oh my God, you feel good about yourself.
Exactly.
But Marianne, if I called you because I'm so busy and I know I'm busy and I finally get to you and I feel good that I finally got to you. And I know, Marianne, most people are very polite like you are, especially with you letting me talk this way. But I finally call you 30 days later or maybe 45 days later, you're on my checklist, and I say, Marianne, I just want to thank you for giving that tribute gift, or I just want to thank you for coming to the event, or whatever that thank you is. And you're very polite, and you hang up, and either you turn to your partner, your spouse, your friend, or if you're by yourself, you say, wow, I guess my donation wasn't that important. It took them 45
45.
days to get
Yeah.
back to me. And that's where this decline starts coming into play, right? So I think that's a really big challenge out there. And because you're having that limited communication between the nonprofit and the constituent, the experience that this constituent is having, which isn't just isolated to one, it's mostly to most, it doesn't lend to a great best practices on this. And really what I've seen out there, and I will say this, Arreva looked at this problem, I mean, many, 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 many years ago, and we said, how do we solve this problem on all of that? How do we eliminate the data movement? How do we help with increasing the donor acquisition? How do you identify those, donors within your donor database in general? And by the way, it doesn't just have to be a donor. It could be a volunteer, right? It could be a board member. It could be a
Sure.
number of things that are within that. But how do you manage that in a way that's going to make them feel that they're always part of your organization? And there's no one-way solution. But I think one of the areas that we addressed this on, and it wasn't just about developing software, but part of it was developing the first, and I love being able to say this, and I haven't seen many doing this. Some claim they do, but they're still missing a lot of things. But having the only all-in-one, and that's really what I mean, is having an all-in-one solution that is fully integrated and automated for the fundraising piece of it, the donor relationship management database piece of it, the auction piece of it. And what that means is it's all within one unified database. Now, that's a very high level statement, right? Because in many instances, you have to have applications like donation pages, unlimited donation pages that have features for reoccurring donations and online tributes and matching gift capabilities and be able to create pledges and track pledges and participate in peer-to-peer fundraising and team fundraising and registering for events, participating and giving them the ability to volunteer online and register on this. Maybe they're doing grants, or maybe they're getting grants, maybe they're giving grants, right? Maybe they're doing a text-based donation. But when I say all of those things, you really want all of those within one system with one database. And that's what is needed out there. Now, Arreva has really accomplished this, and I'm proud that they have, but it's never ending, right? I mean, and what I mean by that is you got to be listening and forward thinking, right? Oh, well, AI is out there. We should embed AI, or nonprofit consulting is in there. How do we embed nonprofit consulting? Or maybe campaign management is a siloed application. How do we take campaign management and put it into Exceed further? So you want to find a solution, whether it's Arreva or not, and really have something that's all in one with one unified database. So you don't have to move data around. And then you can incorporate best practices and automate these things. So when a donor comes in, or an application for a grant, or a pledge comes in, or somebody created a new pledge and they just gave you a new pledge, or a donation came in from a friend through peer-to-peer, or somebody registered from an event through team fundraising. How do you acknowledge them? And your system has to give you that ability to get a notification immediately and then reach out to these people in a timely way and put a better process in place. Because if you really do this, we've seen the results. Donor acquisition goes up, donor retention goes up, acknowledgement is fast, and site engagement is very important. And when you have a system like this, to go back to your question about, one size fits all, it doesn't. If you have a good, and you start with, I mean, and there's no rhyme or reason on this, but if you start with, the ability to segment your database, to go back to what you said, you have to put in place an understanding of, is Marianne one type of donor? Is David Blyer another? Is it a Gen Z? Is it Gen X? I mean, it
Right.
could be a number of different things. So when you have that technology that allows you to do research within your technology, that you can segment and make sure you're focusing your resources, and maybe this month you're only focusing your resources on high potential donors and maximizing your return. This way you can have a precision target market to those type of people, right? Maybe you want to have a tailored message and campaigns that demonstrate that you understand and value that particular type of supporter, and you're fostering trust and loyalty, and then you want to expand the reach, right? So if you can really segment that database, you should be able to, in the digital world, have different, what I call digital channels, right? And even outside of the digital channels, if you have sponsors or partnerships with corporations, that they can help you connect to new audiences to go back again and increase into that donor acquisition. And really what you're really trying to do is inspire them to join your mission. Why, right? So if you really have a data-driven insight that allows you continuously to refine, you can always improve your strategies. You can ensure, ongoing donor support with this type of understanding of your donors. I mean, I really could get into this a lot further, but I think one of the biggest mistakes nonprofits make is trying to speak to everyone. And that's the reality, is your best donors, really being focused on. And then how do you nurture the younger donors? So I think even using different types of prospect research out there, like donor search and others, that can really help you expand that. So those are just some of the high level points of that.
All right, I want to give an example of what this looks like for one of my clients, which was the communications would put out the email from one system, right? And then the donor database was a whole other system. But like, let's say you got the email from the organization, and I'm like, oh, the story really inspired me, and I hit reply and sent a reply. And as a fundraiser, I'm looking at that reply and going, wow, that person is demonstrating interest, right? And connection. And I want to connect with that. But the communications person, like, oh, they responded. That's so great. Not thinking like, oh, that's part of right? Like it was just like a very siloed, everybody's got their own department and their own system, and they're not really part of a process, right, of moving people in and seeing themselves as part of the process. And I always remember that story that the client told us. It's like people are reaching out, and right, and they're connecting, and like, and as a fundraiser, I would want to know, but the fundraisers often did not know that that was happening, or what people were responding to in the newsletter,
Right.
because it was two different systems, right? And they weren't really connecting. Another example
That's a
I want to,
problem.
yeah, and another
Yeah.
example is like events. You talked about events. I think this is a huge thing. Events are exhausting. and like, oh, so, set it. And this is all, I'm sure, part of your technology. You can set all that follow-up email before the events even happens. Like, I want an email the next day in my inbox thanking me for coming with some pictures and telling me how great it was. Like, that's how you keep them. If you look at it
I,
like
yeah,
a zigzag line, like they go to the event, they get high, right? And then they drop down, 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 down. And the farther down they go, the farther down you have to reach to them to pull them back up. So it's like this idea of keeping them at that high level. Like, you know what I mean? So it barely dips. It's just engagement, engagement, engagement. And I understand what you're saying. Like the systemization of this makes it happen. People don't realize that from the outside, but from the inside, it's the system that makes it seamless, that makes people feel important. Because the
that's
other
right.
way, right? Like, oh, I'm trying to get down this list of thank yous, and it's a month later, and I'm so excited, right, that I finally called, and then you're like, oh, thanks. Like, well, that did a month
And you
ago.
remember
I've
that.
forgotten all about that by now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're spot on. And just to go back to the original, having two separate systems and not being able to know where which one went to does not help this
Right.
process
It,
at
it
all.
doesn't.
No.
And okay, so the other thing that you mentioned that I want to talk about is you said that acquisition and retention is down, right? But giving is up. Is that correct? And
Yes.
what is
The more,
happening there?
yeah. Well, I think from that perspective, it goes back to Marianne that last year you gave $1, right? Just in general. Your total contributions to the nonprofits were $1. This year you decided I'm going to give $1.10. So right there, your donation as an individual has gone up. So we track that, right? But when you go back and look at that, where did you spend that dollar? You used to give the local nonprofit down the street $1 every year for the last 10 years. But you've been approached by a few other nonprofits, and everybody's trying to reach out to you, and something caught your eye. And at the same time, you did recall that your experience, maybe over the last few years, hasn't been what you thought it should be. So, but you still believe in that nonprofit. So this year you decided, instead of giving them the dollar, I'm going to give them a 50 cents. I'm still going to give them money. And for me, that's almost more than half. So I'm giving them that 50 cents. But now I'm going to give this other one that I just met, and I learned about, and I love. I'm going to give them 50 cents. And then I'm going to give another one that I heard a little bit about 10 cents. So you're spreading your donation out, but it began back with the experience that you've been having over the last 10 years with that organization. That hasn't been what you thought it was. In fact, I could give you a real life story, right? I mean, I do this every single day. I just left a board member, which was pretty interesting in their own right. And we were talking about tribute gifts and things of that sort. And they said, David, I got to be honest with you. And I won't mention the person's name or the company, but they said, it was really interesting. I've been sitting on this board for 3 years, and I am actually thinking of getting off the board. And I really believe in the cause, but I don't know if I believe in the company and the organization. And I said, wow, that's pretty strong. Why? And you're a board member. Well, one of my reasons, and it's a primary reason, is I always believe in this organization. I love giving tribute gifts out. Um, but my challenge has always been, and now I'm very frustrated that my last tribute gift, and I just gave another one, but my last tribute gift, it's been 4 months, David. I said, okay. And when I gave the tribute gift, I didn't get any acknowledgement that the person
Mm,
I gave a tribute gift to, one, was acknowledged. The person that I gave, and this was in honor of, it wasn't in memory of, never reached back out to me to thank me. And I know them, they're very polite. I didn't want to call them because now it's too late for me to call them and say, did you ever get a tribute gift in honor of this? I was embarrassed about it. I called the nonprofit. Keep in mind, I'm not a power person. I'm not a control person. I love sitting on the board. I love giving my suggestions on a quarterly basis. I didn't even call the executive. I called the development director and I said, hey, 2 months ago, by the way, this is going on for 4 months. 2 months ago, I called and the development director said, oh, you know what? Let me look into that. I'll get right back to you. Well, the development director didn't call me back for 3 weeks.
Hmm.
And then finally, when they called me back, they said, oh, I've just been busy. Sorry it took me so long. Um, but I looked into this. No, they didn't get an acknowledgement. But I'll find out when that's going out and let you know. And I said to them, it's been now 2 months and 3 weeks. I would really appreciate it if you could get that out this week. And the development director said, let me see what I can do. Well, 3 months later, now I'm into this for 3 months, David. Um, I called them back and they said, oh my God, they hadn't sent it out. I definitely said something to them. Let me go look into this. Now it's 3.5 months. And if they're doing this to me and I sit on this board that I'm proud of, I can't imagine how they're reacting to other people that are out there. And I am a big donor and I am very involved. And if they're willing to treat me like this, is this the type of board that I really want to be on in this organization? And I
Wow.
am seeing, because I sit on the board meeting and I see the numbers, there has been a decline in the donor acquisition. There has been a decline in donor retention. And you're talking to me about your solution. And I'm saying, oh my God, we need something like this. But I'm at the point that I'm not going to be on this board, nor will I ever give him another tribute gift. And that's what's going on. Now, not everybody's going to tell the organization that, right? And not
No,
everybody's going to be as
they'll just
polite
drift.
as
They'll just drift away. Yeah.
they'll just redirect their money.
Hmm.
They're still going to give that $1.10, but now they're going to lose it completely. That's in a high level perspective, what's really going on. And the organization themselves is not acknowledging this because they don't have the right systems in place. They can't see, it's like anything else out there, right? You want to know fast on anything that we do. I know as a company, I track everything, right? We track response time, even on our support side. We literally look at this daily. If we got a support ticket as an example, we look at when that ticket came in, how fast we looked at that ticket, how fast we responded to that ticket, because that is about what? Retention, right? And we
Hmm.
look at this constantly every single day, and we've built processes around this. Nonprofits should be doing the exact same thing, but if they don't have the technology, it's very difficult to do it.
Right. And again, the lack of technology internally leads to the disconnect externally, right? And then
Absolutely.
so people are they're taking their money, they're just taking it other places. I have a question for you. This is sort of an outlier, but do you feel like all of the GoFundMe's, kind of like all of this like one-off crowd fundraising has impacted giving, or are they two different kinds of people?
I'm really glad, Marianne, you bring that up. First of all, I think GoFundMe is a really good platform. But it's like anything else. Like I said, one size doesn't fit everybody, right? I think GoFundMe, first of all, I've seen nonprofits that use GoFundMe and all they're doing is hurting themselves. But I'm going to explain the why.
Yeah.
If you are an individual, if you're an individual and God forbid your friend's house burns down and they didn't have insurance and you have a lot of friends and you want to help them, I would go to GoFundMe in a minute, right? Because they're not necessarily caring where that money came from. It's a one-off thing. I'm collecting the money. I take the check. I give them the check. They say thank you, right? Those are great things, right? Maybe there's a homeless guy that you want to help out. Maybe there's something in your community that's a one-off. You want to help out.
We just
It could
had
be a
a
number.
we had a very devastating tornado come through St. Louis in May, and there's a lot of like private, people like, hey, just help me rebuild, or help this community rebuild, kind of like grassroots outside of the traditional roles of philanthropy, right? That's what you're talking about.
When you're a nonprofit, when you're a nonprofit, I caution you, do not use GoFundMe because I'll tell you why. What you want to have, and I go back to software, you want to have a hit, I'll call it as opposed to a GoFundMe. I look at that as what I will call a peer-to-peer fundraising. Peer-to-peer is
Yeah.
me. sending it out to my peers and my peers of people that I know personally, and I want to tell them about why I'm trying to help. As an example, maybe my local my local boys and girls clubs, right? Everybody knows a boys and girls club. So let's just use a national chapter. So if I have my national boys and girls club chapter that I work with in my community, and and they just had a nice meeting and they said, hey, by the way, summer's coming up. Um, we want to send 100 kids to this program. It's $1,000 a kid. Could I ask 10 board members here to each of you, indirectly to help raise $10,000? Or, and again, you got to know your audience too, right? Maybe I only can, maybe they reach me and say, hey, David, would you help us get one kid to, yeah, I think I can do $1,000. Maybe the guy next to me can do 5 kids. Maybe the guy next to me can do 25 kids, right? So you got to know your audience, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is, if I'm going out there, I want to give them the ability. First of all, I want to give them flexibility. If they want to just go and meet you, Marianne, I'm talking to you and say, hey, I'm looking to raise $1,000, blah, blah, blah. And Marianne, you say, I'll write you a check, David. But many board members and many people are not development directors. They're not necessarily comfortable with face to face and asking a friend for money. But
Sure.
maybe they are comfortable. And I'm going back to that GoFundMe concept, right? Um, so if the nonprofit, in this case, the Boys and Girls Clubs, they have the software, again, and I'm going to use this because it's important, integrated, right? If they have a solution that's fully integrated, that includes, in addition to their fundraising and their events, peer-to-peer fundraising, and I give them this, that it should be 1 click away, 3 clicks, sign my name, write an email, right? Who they are, why I'm raising $1,000, where it goes to, the impact, which goes to another piece of this, right? Which I'll talk about, I'll talk about later. But when you think about a peer-to-peer fundraising, I should be able to send a peer-to-peer fundraising page to my network that know me, right? And I would write an email. And by the way, the nonprofit doesn't see my email list unless they click on my page and give a donation. So maybe I have 50 friends and I write a nice email and I have a link there, and that link goes to that peer-to-peer fundraising page that is on the nonprofit Boys and Girls Club's website. So I write, hey, Marianne, or hey, my friends, I'm I'm sitting on the board of a Boys and Girls Club. Um, there's a huge summer program. I've signed up to help 10 kids. It's $1,000 a kid. Here's what the program consists of. Without this money, these kids couldn't do this. And I would write a compelling story, right? And then I'd send it out. Well, I read it, Marianne, and I click on it, and it takes me to this peer-to-peer fundraising page. And I say, think of it as a donation page, but it's from my friend. I said, you know what? I'll give $100. Boom. Maybe there's a leaderboard on there. So my name shows up. It shows I gave $100, right? And then that leaderboard and all my other friends start coming and say, oh, I see David gave 100. I'll give 200. Oh, I see that my friend
Yes.
David gave 100 and I'll give 300. The next thing you know, that $10,000 gift or $1,000 goal that I was looking for, I've exceeded that. However, let's keep this in mind. When David Blyer gives a donation to Marianne on that peer-to-peer fundraising and I click submit, all of my information is going where as an individual donor? Directly into the Boys and Girls Club's donor relationship management database. David Blyer is getting an automatic thank you acknowledgement receipt, and the staff is getting an immediate notification that David Blyer just gave on behalf of Marianne's peer-to-peer fundraising page. And if they have best practices in place, they would call me. And by the way, the technology should also have a step further, Marianne, that you would get an acknowledgement that you knew David Blyer, your friend, just gave a donation. So you could physically call me and say, David, I saw you just gave a donation. Thank you. That was awesome. Blah, blah, blah. The staff gets a notification that David Blyer just gave on behalf of the peer-to-peer fundraising, Marianne, from you. and they could say, hey, by the way, thank you on behalf of Marianne. She's a dear friend of our organization. Would you like to learn more about what we do? And could I sign you up for our newsletter? Could I send you an invitation on the next one? And by asking permission, 90% of the people are going to say, if my friend does it, I want to learn a little more. That goes back to donor acquisition. And then from acknowledgement, Marianne, anybody that's building these pages as an organization, maybe they're having a monthly meeting. Maybe there was a sense of urgency for this peer-to-peer fundraising page, or maybe it was an annual goal. It could be a number of different things. But when you bring all of these people in, you can acknowledge, in this case, Marianne, I could say, by the way, Marianne, you signed up to raise $1,000 and send one kid away. By the way, I want to thank you because not only did you raise the thousand, we just increased our donor acquisition because we got 15 donations from you, of which 12 of those said we want more information, and now they're on our donor database. That does not happen with the GoFundMe. You're only getting a check from that one individual that's getting that off their database. So those are lost potential donors. They just gave it to a friend. Because of it's integrated and automated within the platform, now there's an ability to increase their donor acquisition, or in this case, their donor database with more new donors. They're getting acknowledgement from the organization, thanking David, not only for the money, but the increase. I feel good because not only did I raise money, but I also helped contribute to that increase in donor acquisition, and I got fast acknowledgement. I'll do this every single time the organization asks me to help raise money because I feel good about this.
Right.
That's the difference between a GoFundMe and a peer-to-peer fundraising that's integrated with the organization.
Right. And I guess it's just so much to do with like leading into that engagement, because you gave really good examples of, moving people along in a process like, hey, would you like to receive our newsletter? Would you like to come, or an invitation to, whatever, if you're doing an educational webinar or a lunch and learn or an event, like it's like when I work with folks, I talk about developing like, what is the process by which you enroll people into this organization? And they often really understand that they don't understand the process, but realize where the gaps are. And a lot of times the gaps is exactly where you said, which is how to get people off an email list and into something, right? Like, and so moving them from like, yes, I would say yes to an email and I'm getting the email. Okay, what can I invite them into? Like if they're interested into a higher level of engagement, what there's a million examples of what that could look like, but in order to then like kind of move them down the next phase, which is part of like the engagement process, is continuing to give them value and to give them reinforcement into, right, into that they're important to the organization. I mean, like, it's really just like, it's just to make me feel important. That's all this is. Like, that's really what the core of that you do. You help organizations make people feel important.
And when you go back to when we talk about software, right? I'm talking about software. I'm not trying to sell anybody in your audience about it. I mean, you should definitely look at Arreva. But when you really think about statistics, 61% of donors worldwide prefer giving online. So if you're giving your volunteers, if you're giving your board members, maybe even your active donors, the ability to send something out online, there's a better chance of them raising more money and an easier way of doing this. But you at the same time, that's just one channel, as we talked about the difference between a GoFundMe as a standalone and integrated with peer-to-peer fundraising, right? But I think there's more things out there that, when you're talking about donor acquisition and donor retention and acknowledgement, I think there's a whole conversation, and we could talk about tips for increasing, giving. I mean, make it easy to give, and you've got to have multiple ways of giving. First of all, I see this way too many times. Invest in your website. I mean, truly, that's like your house, driving up to your house, right? Are you proud of your house? Do you want the grass to be
You are
cut?
so right. It is the foundation of everything. Yes.
So I always say, and I love the word. I was going to use it. I'm going to steal it now. Your website is the foundation of your online presence. You
Yeah.
have to, and you also have to make sure it's mobile responsive. I still can't believe a lot of these sites are still not mobile responsive. They've got to be visually appealing. They've got to make it easy to navigate. I talk about donor centric, right? You've got to have a donor centric website. We talk about donor centric always. Highlight key sections like our mission, success stories, donate on the homepage. I mean, I could get a lot further about homepages and give you a lot of wonderful examples on this. You've got to leverage social media strategically. You've got to share your mission driven content that educates, that inspires, that has a call to action. They should be using a mix of photos, videos, testimonials to showcase the impact. I mean, and tailoring messaging from your software, whether you're tailoring it through Facebook, maybe one way, Instagram another way, LinkedIn another way, TikTok another way. But you got to leverage different social media, especially depending upon what your vision is. Are you going after Gen X, Gen Y? I mean, there's all sorts of that out there, and
Right.
you got to be paying attention to this today. You got to promote offline events through, I'm not saying even technology, through emails or social media, or, I mean, I could go on and on. The other thing about this is engage through the partnerships. I know a lot of people do sponsorships, have partners, they work on this because they give larger gifts or larger donations. But you should also be embracing them. You should be collaborating with the local businesses, the media outlets, influencers who truly align with your mission and that will really help you extend your reach and the credibility that you're providing with the right messaging. So I think when we talk about it, I think making it easier in multiple ways, whether it's the website, right? Whether you're creating a donation pages, you don't have to have, I have nonprofits that have done amazing things, even with their donation pages, like as opposed to having a normal, do you want to give $10, $25, $50? What about $10 with a picture that says this $10 will help with a welcome bag. $25 helps with the running water of, this room.
Right.
$2,500 helps with underwriting the cost of operating expense for this. Explaining that, so say, wow, I didn't know that. I go back to the peer-to-peer fundraising. It empowers supporters to raise funds on your behalf through their personalized campaigns and their personalized social media by sharing this out in social media, right? Maybe another way is text. I don't see it enough, but I've seen it. I know we provide it, but through, text to fund.
Right.
It's offering a simple way to a text donation. Everybody. I mean, I don't know about you, but my email could be piling up, but boy, if I get a text, I'm right on
Yeah,
top
for
of
sure.
that.
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
when you think about that, I go back when I talked about integrating peer-to-peer fundraising. Well, event registration and event management should be the same thing. Use integrated fundraising with automatic emails of thank you acknowledgments, clear call to actions, and maybe even with that, it even links to your online donation software, right? Your whatever. But um, and make sure everything is mobile optimized. I take none of this for granted because I see it every single day, with over half of online donations made, mobily. Make sure your donation process is seamless. It's on on smartphones. It's on, your tablets. It's on all of these things. But the other thing is make sure your call to actions are prominently placed in the right area. I have seen call to actions in the middle of the page. I don't know why. Okay. I mean, you'd be very surprised, so you got to guide the experience, on these. You've got to have a streamlined process with minimal steps just to click that donation button, right? I mean, and then receiving an automatic confirmation. These are just some of the things. And then have that system that you can really even do A/B testing on your call to actions. How many people are they tracking this? how many emails did you send out? How many people opened it up? How many people responded? I mean, is there something wrong? Maybe it was the placement of design. Maybe it was the wrong
Right.
messaging. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many other things that you really, really want to enable these things on. So,
Okay, so we're almost out of time. So I want to ask this question, which is if I'm an executive director and I'm like hearing this, like, oh my God, he's talking about me. I've got this system and this thing. And I like, what do I do? What's the best way to get started? No, with Arreva or, with, just the process of making that big change. Because I feel like it can feel really daunting to do this,
yeah.
especially if you've kind of been doing it this way for a really long time and there may be people around you who are resistant to change and don't understand, like the importance of it.
Well, Marianne, I agree with you. It is daunting. It is daunting and it's challenging. And people only know what they know, right? I mean,
Hmm.
the reason we spend time we do spend time in one, trying to understand what the organization actually does today when we do this. And if they, and I'm a vendor, right? So maybe they don't trust me, they don't know me yet, and you got to build trust like anything else.
Sure.
But first of all, if they went to my website, we did something that was great. I give really a lot of credit to my senior director of marketing. She's utterly amazing. We built a guideline, okay? It was a generic guideline. Whether it benefited Arreva or not, it didn't matter. I want people to think about when they're thinking about a system, are they looking for one single database? What type of applications, one, are they using today? And I don't mean an application. Are they driving donations? Are they running events? Are they doing capital campaigns? Are they looking for grants? Do they want to do a team event with team fundraising? Maybe they haven't done it yet, but they think about it in the future. Think about not only what you're looking at or what you're using today, but try and vision where you want to be, even though it's not easy. And I know it's not easy, but build a checklist. Now, you don't have to go to our website, Arreva. There's a checklist on there and check everything off. So when you're looking for a new system, make sure it's providing you that full checklist. We've just done that in general. We've sent it out to the world if they want to look at it and use it.
Is that like if I go to your website under like the resources, the like downloadable guides or things like that?
Yeah, downloadable guides.
Yeah.
It's right there. It's great.
We'll put
But
the
you
link
really
in
got to,
the show notes, but you have a ton of really great stuff on your website that not just that guide that you mentioned, but a lot of other guides, a lot of great information around acquisition, retention, engagement. Like I get board fundraising engagement, like lots of cool stuff here.
well, in the company, we have a lot of great people that really do understand the nonprofit industry and not just about building software. And we really do want to help them. We don't care whether they're an existing customer or not. Go to our website, download whatever. If it helps you, it helps you. We really want to make so many nonprofits successful, whether they're using our software or not. I mean, we just love the industry. We do things because it's social. We believe in social good.
Me too. Ah, that's so amazing. I love that so much. Thank you so much. I have one more quick question, which
Sure.
is how I wrap up every episode now. I am in St. Louis. Where are you located?
I'm in Florida.
Okay, you're in Florida. Something tells me you're a bit of a performer. So if I was ever in Florida or you're in St. Louis and we wind up at a karaoke bar, which I feel like at this point is highly likely, what's your go-to song? What are you singing? What are you winding the crowds with, David?
Oh my God. First of all, would you believe it? I have stage fright. I don't like
No way.
I literally I love talking one-on-one. I'm really good at one-on-one. I really don't like getting up in front of an audience. I get jittery and nervous. I don't know why. I've been doing this for so long. I ask people that I sounding nervous? Oh my God, no, but I will share that with you. So I think you will not see me at a karaoke. And if I ever do sing, Marianne, I could trust you. It's in my shower when nobody can hear me, because if my wife does hear me, she closes the door. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll sing for the both of us because there's no problem for me. Awesome. Dave, thank you so much for this conversation. I think there's a lot for folks to think about. And honestly, check out the Arreva website. I put the link in the show notes. There's so many good stuff. And look at that checklist. Get yourself started because, like you said, the lack of internal integration is causing external
It really
breakdown.
is.
It really is.
Yeah,
And that's the
it
last, and
really
I
is.
know that's the last thing anybody wants. Nobody ever says, "Oh, I'm going to go neglect people today," or like that's not what it's just what winds up happening, right?
Yeah.
Because they just don't have the systems to support the work. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Marianne. You're awesome. I appreciate it.
All
Good
right,
timing. I had 3 minutes to go and
there we go.
before my
Okay,
next
and
meeting.
this is
Thank you.
thanks so much, and this thanks so much for being here for this episode of the Influential Nonprofit. As always, you can reach out to me. My links in the show notes, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Marianne.